Well, hello, Convention of State supporters. Welcome back to another episode of COS Live. My name is Andrew Woodruff. I'll be your host for this episode. And of course, I am joined by the wonderful, the lovely Rita Peters, who is our Senior Vice President of Legislative Affairs. Rita, how are you doing?
I'm great. Ready to get this thing started again.
Great. I'm happy to be here as well, but I am not so happy about the betrayal that we saw because the Supreme Court is upholding Obamacare yet again, even though we have an originalist majority on the court. So is that it? Is there any hope of getting the federal government out of the business of healthcare? Is the Supreme Court just the supreme body that dictates all American law? Well, Rita Peters, our Senior Vice President of Legislative Affairs, is going to weigh in just a few moments. Then there's the victory in Georgia that we saw for Convention of States action. We're going to have one of our grassroots volunteers give us an on-the-ground report on what happened in the Peach State. She's going to tell us exactly how they defeated an anti-COS effort there. And of course, we have our Article 5 trivia giveaway with COS Vice President Mike Ruthenberg. Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Andrew. It's another great week to be here with you guys and to share a little bit of trivia. But I'm super excited about this show because there's so many Americans that are so comfortable here in America. We've had it so good for so long. This guest is going to talk about what it's like to actually go through what we're descending into, that we have the ability to stop. It's going to be an exciting show. And I'm going to first do a quick little giveaway because I think it'll be fun to talk, since this week is the anniversary of the ratification of Article 5, along with the rest of the U.S. Constitution. On June 21st, 1788, the Constitution became the official framework of the government of the United States of America, which, of course, is wonderful. This week, what a great anniversary. And my trivia question for the day, first of all, I'm wearing the Hell No Joe shirt, super popular shirt. I like my guns. I want to keep them, and I'm sure many of you want to keep them, and we don't want any executive orders or other things, and so we speak our mind with a Hell No Joe shirt. You can get one at shopconventionofstates.com, or you can win one by being the first one to answer this trivia question. And here we go. Which state of the 13 colonies, of course, which state was the deciding vote that made the Constitution the law of the land? Which state hit us at the tipping point as we celebrate this week? Well, I'll be back a little bit later with that answer. Hopefully, in the meantime, if you didn't win the shirt, you went and got your own, and we'll speak to you later, Andrew.
Thanks, Mike. Well, a lot is made out of every election cycle when it comes to picking the president who is going to nominate the right Supreme Court justices. It's a hot topic every single election cycle. Many Americans, for example, were just so happy and they celebrated when Amy Coney Barrett was elevated to the Supreme Court because she tilted the balance of the court to a 6-3 Republican nominated majority. But last week we saw that despite having a majority, the Supreme Court upheld Obamacare again. And the Republican nominated justices who voted to uphold Obamacare, well, they sided with Obamacare again as well. Rita, so many Americans are just frustrated at the fact that they feel so powerless. The establishment class, they keep telling them that if you just vote for the right person, if you just get the right president, you'll then be able to see the right nominations to the Supreme Court. And those justices are going to be in line with originalism and they're going to be in line with the Constitution. But we just keep getting stabbed in the back. It's like Groundhog Day or something. As a constitutional attorney, can you tell us exactly what happened?
I will. And I just want to say this is really a perfect example of why just swapping out personnel at the federal level isn't the silver bullet, because we have structural problems. In the case of the courts, we have the problem of bad precedents that, requires a lot more than just swapping personnel and then it's all fixed. So with this case, Amy Coney Barrett joined conservative justices Clarence Thomas and Brett Kavanaugh, along with liberal justices Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, Stephen Breyer, and John Roberts to uphold Obamacare and maintain the federal takeover of America's healthcare system. But the 7-2 majority threw out the case not because they determined that Obamacare's mandate is constitutional, but because the plaintiffs didn't have standing to sue, which is a requirement for a federal case to be brought. Since the penalty associated with the individual mandate, the basis for filing the suit, did not pose any financial harm to the plaintiffs, the court said the case should be thrown out. So if you were hoping that you could trust the Supreme Court to limit federal power, this decision comes as a disappointment. Even with a 6-3 conservative majority, the court punted on striking down Obamacare, and they only solidified its status moving forward. So yet another precedent going the wrong way. There's only one group we can trust to defend liberty and self-governance, and it's we the people. Our most powerful tool to use is an Article 5 Convention of States, because a Convention of States has the power to propose constitutional amendments that can get to the root of the problem with the federal government. They can fix the structural cracks. The Supreme Court runs in circles deciding whether this or that law is constitutional or not, whether this or that group of plaintiffs has standing to sue. But that's not the most important question. The most important question is, does the federal government have the power to pass this law in the first place? Do they have the power to dictate healthcare decisions in the first instance? And the answer, of course, is no. And a convention of states can propose constitutional amendments that say as much. Washington shouldn't be in the healthcare business. It shouldn't be in the energy business or the environment business or the economics business. In fact, it shouldn't legislate or spend money on any topic that's not expressly mentioned in the Constitution. Those issues should be left up to the states, where we the people have a real voice. And that's the real lesson here.
Indeed. And over 5 million Americans realize the truth that it doesn't matter if you're talking about the legislative branch, if you're talking about the executive branch or the judicial branch. Americans agree that they have way too much power, and they're not willing to limit their power. If you want to restore the republic, if you want to see real change, it's only going to happen by calling the very first Article 5 Convention of States. And 5 million Americans have already joined that cause, and they want to restore the republic. So if you want to join them, go to conventionofstates.com, sign the petition, and then, of course, share the petition with your friends and family. 15 states have joined our movement thus far. And the first state of those 15 was Georgia, where we have our next guest who is calling from. Well, we are pleased to welcome on Joelle Lapp, who is the state grassroots coordinator for Convention of States Georgia. Joelle, how are you doing today? And thank you for joining us.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, I think we should kick off this interview by first going to the recent victory that happened in Georgia, you and the Georgia team secured. Would you be able to tell us and the viewers a little bit about what happened in Georgia?
Sure. Well, Cobb County is right outside of Atlanta, and it's a pretty big county. It has 13 House districts in it, so it's very powerful as it comes to like the weight in voting. And I can't remember who it was, but one of our Facebook editors got a message on Facebook from one of our supporters, letting us know that they were having a resolution in the Cobb County Republican Party. And the resolution was an anti-Convention of States resolution. And so we got that information on a Tuesday evening, right before Memorial Weekend. We then proceeded the next day to start mobilizing, having several Facebook Lives. We had 8 Facebook Lives in 3 days. We sent out text blasts, and we also sent out email blasts, and also did a telepatriot mission. So it was very cool, first time ever as a relatively new grassroots state. We've passed the resolution back in 2014, but as a state of volunteers, we're still relatively new at getting all this stuff working.
Well, from the pictures, it looked like you had a huge crowd. Do you think the members at the meeting were surprised by the way you guys were able to organize so quickly?
Yes, actually, they were. The head of the GOP came out to talk to us, and she was very kind of sketchy, a little bit nervous because more and more people started coming. We wound up having more than 30 people show up on a Saturday morning on a holiday weekend. So it was kind of funny. A lot of the people walking in were afraid to make eye contact and had their heads down, and they locked the door so we couldn't come in. They even locked the door on some of their members. So as their members were getting there, they had to knock and wait for somebody to let them in. They called the police on us, which was easily, I took care of that very easily by giving them a business card and telling them that as volunteers of Convention of States, it is extremely important to us to be polite and respectful. And if there was going to be any problems, it was probably going to be the GOP people. And they laughed at that, and they were there 5 minutes and left because they realized that that there was a little bit of overreaction on the part of the GOP that day.
Mm-hmm. It's great seeing that photo. Seeing so many grassroots volunteers show up. And it really speaks to the heart of our long-term mission. Because like you said, Georgia passed in 2014. Our big, audacious goal is to get to a convention where we can propose term limits, fiscal restraints, reducing the federal government's jurisdiction, putting the federal government back in that constitutional box that it's supposed to be in. And then, of course, we want to shut the lid and never open it up again. But that's not our mission. Our mission is to grow a strong, engaged grassroots army of self-governing activists. And Georgia, like you said, was the first state to pass the COS resolution. But you and the Georgia team didn't drop off with activism. You increased activism. So why is it important for a past state to continue with momentum, and why has the Georgia team stayed so active?
Well, the funny thing is the Georgia team hasn't stayed so active. It's only been active since the election, really, which is even more powerful that we've done as much as we've done in such a short period of time. When I came on in May of last year, there were 3 people in the organization in Georgia. Now we have well over 100. And the really impressive part is, if you look at that picture, there was only maybe 6 people that are actual volunteers for Convention of States. The rest of them are petition signers, but they're people that took the time out of their day without being volunteers to show up and show their support. So now we're trying to move them forward a little bit to say, okay, you came because you cared. Now let's do some more. Let's get more involved. Let's get more active.
Well, speaking of getting involved and getting active, why don't you tell us your story of how you joined the Convention of States effort and why you decided to volunteer?
Well, in college, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in political science. So I've always kind of been very interested in politics. But then life kind of happened, kids. I had a livestock farm for many years. I just didn't have the time to be involved. And things have settled down. My kids are grown. I've got a 20-year-old and a 14-year-old now. So, I can kind of do the things that interest me without putting them completely first all the time. And my husband and I were sitting down having a craft beer. And if anybody knows me, they know that that's what we enjoy. And I was scrolling through Facebook, and I saw all this stuff about Convention of States. And this was right on the heels of all the cities being burnt down last spring by, BLM and Antifa. And it was just, the timing was perfect for me to see that there was an organization out there that actually had results. There was not only was I able to do something, I was able to get involved with something that could change the entire country. And that was huge to me. There's results with Convention of States.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So then I want to ask you about, the changes that you want to see, because as you know, our Article 5 resolution, it covers 3 topics: fiscal restraints, term limits for elected officials, and limitations on federal power. So what amendment idea do you like most that fits within these three categories that you hope gets proposed at a convention?
Oh, that's a little above my pay grade. There's so many. I think the exciting thing for convention for me is just seeing the ideas that come out of it, because there's so many conversations that need to be had. So whether or not there's something that, particularly interests me, like term limits, there's so many different ways term limits could go. How long should they be reelected after, a cooling period, so to speak? There's going to be so much that comes out of convention that I don't think one person can really say that they've got, a particular idea that is worthy of what convention is going to bring us.
It's interesting that you say that, because that has really been the approach of the Convention of States movement, is to limit the convention by subject matter rather than getting behind one particular amendment that's already prepackaged and pre-worded, because we see the value, as did the founders, in getting the states together in a room, the delegations that they send, to talk about and use their collective wisdom to figure out the best way to impose fiscal restraint, the best way to limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and the best kinds of term limits, and which federal officials really need those term limits. So let me ask you this. What's next for Convention of States, Georgia? Do you have any events coming up or any calls to action for Georgians who are watching?
Absolutely. We need more volunteers. Georgia's a huge state, and we have Atlanta. Georgia's been in the news a lot. We've got a lot of stuff going on, or we've had a lot of stuff going on, especially with the governor's race coming up next year. And we just need as much help as we can get. However, we are very focused on Cobb County, because even though the resolution was not passed, we do believe that it's going to come back up. It's just going to be changed a little bit so that it gets the votes that it needs, because it only failed by 30 votes. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is a 4th of July parade. It's going to be on Saturday. So it's the 3rd, not the 4th. And you can contact myself about it. My email address is jo.lapp, so it's jo.lapp@cosaction.com, or you can email the person that is going to be heading it, which is Tracy Stevenson. So tracy.stevenson with a V @cosaction.com, and you'll get all the information needed for where we're going to be setting up. We have access to a parking lot nearby. So we want to show Cobb County who we are, what we're about, so that as these lies keep coming forward, that we're able to stop them in their tracks, because people will recognize what they've been, what the information they've gotten from us versus the information they're getting from these other organizations. So it's really important.
Very exciting. I can't wait to see some more pictures of the events that are going to be held on July 3rd. Thank you, Joelle, for joining us on this episode. It was really great hearing about the victory that you and the Georgia team and the supporters there were able to accomplish.
Thank you so much.
All right, we are going to transition to our Article 5 trivia answer with COS Vice President Mike Ruthenberg. Mike, back to you.
Okay, well, thanks for having me back. I guess it wouldn't be very climatic if I didn't come back and give the answer, but I'm here and I'm going to give that answer. And if you remember, or maybe you missed the beginning of the show and you didn't hear that we are giving away a Hell No Joe t-shirt in whatever size you want. Or if you didn't get it, you can go to shopconventionestates.com and get your own. But in the meantime, the question was, well, first of all, as you remember, this week is the anniversary of the ratification of Article 5, along with the rest of the Constitution, way back on June 21st, 1788. The Constitution became the law of the land. The question, though, is which one state was the deciding vote? They became the 9th state out of the 13 colonies or states to make that Constitution the official law of the land? The answer, New Hampshire, the live free or die state. On June 21st, 1788, the Constitution became the official framework of the federal government of the United States of America when New Hampshire became the 9th of 13 states to ratify it. That's an exciting fact for you to know. And if you live in New Hampshire, what a great place to be. It's such a beautiful place. And you guys have your place in history. Back to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Mike. Well, we are going to go ahead and sign off. If you are tired of the Supreme Court trampling on your rights, on the rights of the people, if you are tired of hoping in the next justice, or if you're tired of just hoping that we can elect the right people to office, know this: there's only one mechanism powerful enough to restore our republic. One mechanism that's powerful enough to put the federal government back in the constitutional box that it is supposed to be in. The good news is an Article 5 convention of states has the power to limit the size, scope, and jurisdiction of the federal government. We can propose amendments that would rein in the federal government spending, that can kick out career politicians, and that can reduce the jurisdiction of the federal government. But an Article 5 convention of states could also nullify SCOTUS decisions that are outside the bounds of the Constitution. It's up to you, though. It's up to people like you to bring this cause to fruition. We need people on the ground who are willing to restore the republic. This starts with we, the people. I want you to empower your legislator with their constitutional right to call the very first Article 5 convention of states to propose term limits, fiscal restraints, and limit the jurisdiction of the federal government. This latest SCOTUS decision, I know it was really discouraging, but it's going to take you and others joining this movement. All right, Rita, tell them where they can go when it comes to social media.
Okay, I will. And they're definitely going to want to do it because we've got stuff happening all over the country all the time. So don't forget to follow us on Rumble, MeWe, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Parler, and Instagram. You can also text the word START to 54555 in order to bypass big tech and make sure you receive important news and messages from COS. Check out the Battle Cry with COS President Mark Meckler. That's Sunday nights at 8:00 p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll see you back here next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time for another edition of COS Live. But right now, it's time for you and me to get back to work because we have a country to save. And remember, if you're looking for the person who is going to restore the republic, hold up a mirror because it's going to be you. Thanks for watching.
After the last election, liberty-minded Americans faced a difficult question. What do we do now? Our cities have been ravaged by riots. Calls from the left to defund the police continue unabated, while violent crime and murder rates skyrocket across the country. Joe Biden controls the White House. Sort of. Really, we all know that Joe Biden's no longer in control of his faculties, and others behind the scenes actually control the agenda. Socialists control Congress. Leftists control the deep state. Marxists control our country's schools and universities, and the tech oligarchs are their willing censors and watchful spies. So who has a plan to stop them? Certainly, we're not seeing courage from Capitol Hill to stand up to the Democrats and their woke mob. The good news is that we do have a plan to stop them. This is the only plan that bypasses Biden and Congress to save the republic. And this plan brings the fight to where we, the people, have a political advantage. While many Americans were disappointed in the outcome of this election at the presidential level, liberty-minded state legislators quietly swept to enormous victories. Now's the time to use this to our advantage and draw the fight for our liberties out of the swamp and into the battlefield where we, the people, have the advantage, in the states. This plan to call a convention of states can propose constitutional amendments that prohibit Congress from adding justices to the Supreme Court or states to the Union. This plan can secure our Second Amendment rights. It can eliminate the woke Department of Education, and it can stop the federal government from taking over the state election process. You need to know that this plan's underway already, and it's working. Join 5 million supporters and citizen activists, along with my friends Mark Levin, Rand Paul, Ben Shapiro, Glenn Beck, Mike Huckabee, Sean Hannity, and many, many more.
The Convention of States, ultimately, fundamentally, the way to secure our republic.
Washington is so broken it may not be fixable, that the only way you'll truly get reform is by having a convention where people decide, you know, we need to have term limits, or we have to have a balanced budget amendment.
I have endorsed it, and I believe very strongly that it's the only way we're ever going to get a balanced budget amendment. It's the only way we're ever going to be able to bring some real reform to our system.
I mean, I've been a longtime supporter of the Convention of States and to reestablish the sort of guiding principles of the Constitution.
You have a chance of really saving the republic. I am all in. ConventionOfStates.com.
And now I'm joining Convention of States to make this happen. So join me in this constitutional revolution at ConventionOfStates.com. They have a petition. Go sign it today.
Support the only plan that bypasses Biden and Congress to save the republic. Sign the petition at ConventionOfStates.com. Okay, so I'm here in New Jersey at an event for the New Jersey team. Just had lunch with them. Great team, inspired team. For those of you who think you can't do it in a blue state, just watch New Jersey. I got to show you what's going on here. So we're at a church. They've taken over this church. They've got all these tents set up outside. Really beautiful. And then I'm going to walk you inside because you're not going to believe this. I mean, these guys have done a spectacular job. Check this out. How cool is this? This is what it looks like when you walk up to the front door. You can see Monica letting me in. We're going to go in like this. We're going to go in the front door. You got all the balloons. You got to love the red, white, and blue balloons, right? You go inside. Look at this. How beautiful is that? These guys have it all set up. All the volunteers are here in advance. All right, here we're going to go into the main area. They've got their signs up. Go into the church here. Check that out. This is the full deal. These guys, they got their cameras set up, multiple cameras to film the room. And these guys are doing it right. So this is New Jersey. For those of you who are in red states and say it's tough, well, if they can do it in New Jersey, you can do it there. If you're in a blue state, maybe California, New Jersey proven, they can do it in New Jersey.
So, you know, maybe he will change things. He really will make a difference. I mean, he promised he would. But it seemed that he actually did the opposite. Like, he actually entrenched all the very worst things about the government. I mean, he might as well have been, you know, Jimmy Carter. I mean, he really didn't make any changes. He actually was, I think, just made it actually worse. So then after that, I started